Morbid Facts, Part 581. When Pope Pius died, his embalming was so poorly botched that his body began to rot and bloat almost immediately. During the public viewing, his nose fell off, and his body reportedly exploded from the gas buildup inside of the casket due to blistering heat. After being killed in a shootout in 1911, outlaw Elmer McCurdy's embalmed body was mummified and passed around as a carnival sideshow prop for more than 60 years. His corpse was finally identified in 1976, when a TV crew realized that the mannequin was actually a human body. In 2007, a 53-year-old woman died from a stroke, and her organs, both kidneys, lungs, and her liver, were donated to 4 different patients. Over the following months and years, all 4 recipients developed breast cancer, from which 3 of them ended up dying despite treatment. It was later found that the donor had breast cancer that hadn't been discovered at the time of her death. The only survivor had their donated kidney removed early before the cancer could spread. Doctors have said this was an extremely rare case that shouldn't deter anyone from receiving donated organs. Morbid Facts, Part 582. A 27-year-old beauty queen from Kosovo has reportedly died after attempting to flee from police. Güler Erdogan allegedly tried driving home while drunk until she ran into a police checkpoint. After a breathalyzer recorded her BAC as 3 times the legal limit, she decided to flee from the scene on foot, fearing that her modeling career was over. She ran over to the edge of the overpass and reportedly fell over by accident, plummeting 50 feet onto the 6-lane motorway below before she was fatally struck by a car. In 2012, a woman from South Carolina discovered that her ex-boyfriend of 12 years had been secretly living in her attic for several weeks. She'd been hearing strange noises and nails dropping from the ceiling of her bedroom, before eventually sending her nephew to investigate, who found the man sleeping on the attic's heating unit. The ex-boyfriend had also rigged the ceiling vents to apparently look into the woman's bedroom from above. Upon discovery, he fled the scene before police arrived but was later apprehended. Morbid Facts, Part 583. Just last year, Nicolas Cage's son Weston was arrested after reportedly assaulting his mother, Christina Fulton. The woman says she rushed to Weston after hearing he set his apartment on fire, but upon her arrival, her furious son snapped, violently pulling her into an elevator by her hair before crushing and suffocating her. Fulton testified, "He shoved his thumb into my eye socket. The pain was excruciating. My vision went black. I was losing consciousness." She credited one of Weston's friends with potentially saving her life by intervening before the attack got too ugly. Weston was recently ordered to complete a 2-year mental health diversion program instead of serving prison time. In 2007, a man named Shannon Wisnant bought a storage unit at an auction in North Carolina, only to find a severed human leg when he opened the grill inside. He reported this to authorities, but soon decided he wanted to keep the leg and turn it into a money-making Halloween display for adults and children to pay to see. However, the man who the limb once belonged to caught wind of the story and said it was his own amputated leg that he lost in a plane crash and wanted to be buried with someday. After a long custody battle, the leg was eventually returned to its original owner. Morbid Facts, Part 584. In 1988, Iranian man Mehran Karimi Nasiri was traveling to the UK when his briefcase containing essential refugee documents was stolen from him at a Paris train station. Unable to prove his identity to British immigration officials, Nasiri was returned to France and found himself completely stranded in Terminal 1 of Paris's main airport. He remained there for an astonishing 18 years, during which he became a fixture in the terminal, residing on a red bench surrounded by his belongings, writing in his diary, and engaging with airport staff and travelers. In 2006, Nasiri was hospitalized, finally ending his long stay at the airport. He later lived in a Paris shelter before returning to the airport in 2022, where he would spend his final days before dying of a heart attack in the same terminal. His unique situation inspired several works, most notably the 2004 film The Terminal, directed by Steven Spielberg and starring Tom Hanks. Morbid Facts, Part 585. In 2022, a 25-year-old woman named Sharaban wanted to escape personal and family issues in her life. So she devised a crazy plan to fake her own death and searched social media for lookalikes, eventually stumbling upon a German beauty influencer named Khadija who closely resembled her. After promising the model free beauty treatments, Sharaban kidnapped her and stabbed her 56 times before leaving the body in her car, attempting to pass it off as her own. The influencer was initially misidentified as Sharaban until DNA testing revealed the disturbing truth, as her horrific plan resulted in life in prison. Australian woman Noella Rukunko became famous in 2015 after crashing her own funeral. She was presumed dead after her husband paid several hitmen to kill her upon wrongly suspecting that she was cheating on him. But instead, the hitmen spared her life since they knew her brother and refused to kill women or children. They revealed her husband's plot to her before providing all the evidence and helping her fake her own death. Days later, Noella walked into her own funeral that was organized by her husband, causing him to faint on the spot. He was later arrested, confessed to the crime, and sentenced to 9 years in prison for incitement to murder. Morbid Facts, Part 586. When legendary baseball player Ted Williams died in 2002, his head was cryogenically frozen by the Alcor Life Extension Foundation so that he could potentially be revived in the future. But according to a former employee, his severed head was badly mishandled and allegedly used for batting practice with a wrench inside of the lab. Alcor has denied these dark allegations. In Washington state, a man tried to heat up a lava lamp on his stovetop for unknown reasons. The lamp exploded like a grenade, sending a shard of glass into his chest and puncturing his heart. He was found dead on his kitchen floor, surrounded by wax and broken glass. In 2016, a woman from China was found mummified inside an elevator at her apartment complex. A power outage had shut the lift down and no one realized she was inside. After power returned, no one checked the elevator for more than a month, and at some point she likely died from dehydration. When maintenance workers finally found her body, her hands were completely mangled and claw marks were found inside the elevator, as she desperately attempted to pry the doors open to free herself. This has to be the strangest disorder I've ever heard of by far. Body integrity identity disorder is a rare neurological condition that causes the patient to believe that one or more of their limbs does not belong to them. This sense of disconnection often begins in early childhood, with sufferers reporting an intense and persistent desire to remove or disable the offending limb. Some patients become so distressed that they attempt self-amputation, using power tools, shotguns, or dry ice to damage the limb beyond repair. Renowned cricket historian Roland Bowen famously severed his own leg in 1968 while suffering from this disorder, and in the late 90s, Scottish surgeon Robert Smith controversially performed amputations on healthy patients who begged him to cut off one of their limbs. In many of these cases, patients report an indescribable sense of relief and psychological alignment following the removal of the unwanted limb. For them, the amputation is not a loss, but a long-sought correction in the harmony between their physical form and internal identity. Morbid Facts, Part 588. Eminem's track Brain Damage was inspired by his real-life childhood bully, D'Angelo Bailey. In an interview, Bailey once boasted about beating Eminem so severely that it caused a concussion, bleeding from the ears, and temporary vision loss. In 2001, Bailey tried suing Eminem for slander over the song, but the case was thrown out by the judge, who delivered the ruling in the form of a rap. This photo from 1977 shows a Rhodesian soldier interrogating a group of captured rebels. The men had to hold this position until they talked, and the first one to fall would receive a bullet in the forehead. In 1982, 7 people in the Chicago area randomly dropped dead after taking cyanide-laced Tylenol capsules. The incident changed packaging laws forever, but the killer was never caught. In 2021, a 39-year-old man was reported missing in Barcelona. Days later, his rotting corpse was found stuck inside a papier-mâché dinosaur statue located outside of an abandoned movie theater. He'd somehow dropped his phone inside of the statue, crawled in to retrieve it, got stuck, and died upside down. This is why you should never trust a pair of twins. In 2008, Swedish identical twins Ursula and Sabina Eriksson suddenly sprinted into oncoming traffic on the M6 motorway in London. Ursula was struck by a truck and Sabina by a car, yet both miraculously survived. But as paramedics tended to them, they both violently resisted help, with Sabina screaming, "They're going to steal your organs." She then punched a baffled officer and tried to run into traffic again. Ursula was hospitalized, but Sabina was released the next day despite continued erratic behavior. Just hours later, Sabina encountered a man who kindly offered food and a place to stay, only for Sabina to stab him to death the next day before jumping off a bridge while fleeing from police. Despite fracturing her skull, she survived yet again and was later sentenced to 5 years for manslaughter. There was no evidence that drugs or alcohol was involved in their sudden strange behavior, as the incidents have been chalked up to an episode of shared psychosis. Morbid Facts, Part 590. Mary Bell was only 10 years old when she committed 2 shocking murders in 1968, making her one of the youngest known child killers in modern history. Raised in a violently abusive home in Newcastle, England, Mary first killed 4-year-old Martin Brown by strangulation after telling him his neck looked sore and offering to massage it. She then returned to the scene days later to leave taunting notes saying that she would kill again. 2 months later, she murdered 3-year-old Brian Howe in the same way, not only strangling him but also mutilating his body with scissors and carving the letter M into his stomach. Along with her 13-year-old accomplice Norma Bell, Mary was arrested and showed no remorse during her interrogation. In court, she was only convicted of manslaughter due to her young age and served 12 years in prison before being released with a new identity. Mary and her daughter were granted lifelong anonymity by the court as her current whereabouts are unknown.